Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Positive Proof Podcast. I am your host, Parmis Najmi, and I'm so glad that you're here. If you want to listen to more episodes like this one on self-improvement, mindset, and wellness, go ahead and hit that follow button to join the family. Before I get into today's episode, I just want to ask you guys for a quick and kind favor, and that is if you haven't yet left a review, I would absolutely appreciate if you could do so. It helps so much to build this podcast and help it grow so that we can increase the positive impact we make and just overall make it a bigger community. Also, if you are looking for daily motivation, follow me on Instagram at Positive Proof Podcast, where I post daily quotes that serve as sweet daily reminders. And if anyone is wondering how to leave episode requests, you can actually send me your thoughts via the DM me your thoughts link in the description or via Instagram DM as well. Now, whether this is your first time tuning in or you've been riding with me for a while, today's episode is one of those soft but honest heart-to-hearts that I think so many of us need right now. We're going to be talking about 7 undeniable signs that you are going to be wildly successful even if it doesn't feel like it yet. Now, I know success can feel like such a loaded word because everyone defines it differently. Some people think of money, others think of peace, love, freedom, impact. And the truth is, all of those are very much valid. And this episode isn't about measuring yourself against someone else's idea of success. It's about looking inward and asking, am I becoming the kind of person who's actually capable of holding the life that I want? That's what these signs are about. Now, I'm totally aware that you might listen to this and go, wait, but I don't do that. Does that mean I'm not on the path? And the answer is absolutely not. You might relate to some signs more than others, and that doesn't mean you're failing. It just means that you are self-aware, and that's already a sign of growth. So for every point that I share, I'll also give you a little action step at the end. Nothing overwhelming, just something you can start doing today to move in that direction. Think of them as mindset checkpoints or little invitations you can say yes to if you're ready. And if you're listening and thinking, honestly, I don't feel like I relate to any of these right now, that is okay too. These signs can also serve as gentle ideas to implement into your own life if they resonate. And this isn't a checklist to judge yourself against. It's a conversation, a mirror, maybe even a little spark. Oh, and quick poll check-in for those of you tuning in on Spotify, scroll down and let me know which sign you struggle with the most. I check those responses every time and it genuinely helps me create more content that meets you where you are. So I'd love to hear from you guys. But with all of that said, take a breath, get comfy, and let's get into it. Number 1, you're more focused on alignment than approval. You know that feeling when you used to double check everything, like your outfit, your story, your tone, just to make sure it landed well with other people? Whether it was friends, family, coworkers, or even strangers online, it was like there was this background noise constantly playing, what will they think? And the wild part is most of us don't even realize that we're doing it. We think we're making choices, but really we're performing, we're polishing, we're editing ourselves into a version that feels safer, more liked, more impressive. And I've been there so many times. But one of the clearest signs that you are on the path to real sustainable success, like the kind that feels good on the inside, not just the outside, is when that voice starts getting quieter. When you stop asking, what will they think, and start asking, what feels true for me? It's not always loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's subtle. You stop explaining yourself so much. You stop saying yes just to avoid guilt. You wear the outfit you love even if it's not on trend. Or you pick the job that aligns with your values even if it's not what people expected of you. You move cities. You stay single. You start something that makes no sense to anyone but you. Like I remember a time, I won't go too deep into it now, but I made a decision in my personal life that didn't make sense to almost anyone around me. People ask questions, lots of questions. Some even made comments. And I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting a little or make me nervous and second guess my decision. But at the time, there was this deep, quiet knowing, this voice that said, this might look crazy to them, but it feels right to me, even if it doesn't turn out to be the right decision later on. That's alignment. It felt right in the moment. It felt right based on the knowledge that I had back then. And to me, that's success. Because here's the thing, when you're obsessed with approval, you outsource your power. But when you prioritize alignment, you take it back. You become your own compass. And yeah, it's uncomfortable at first, especially if you're used to being the responsible one or the pleaser or the one who always made the safe choice. But growth often looks like discomfort, not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're finally doing something real. Alignment doesn't mean life is perfect. It means you're no longer willing to abandon yourself just to keep the peace or fit in. And the moment that shift happens, even a little bit, you start to attract different things, different people, different opportunities, and maybe more importantly, a different version of yourself, one that's grounded, self-respecting, honest. So if you've been feeling a little misunderstood lately, or if people are questioning your choices, or if you're walking a path that doesn't come with a crowd clapping for you, don't take that as a red flag. Take it as a green light. Because when you start choosing alignment over approval, that's not rebellion, that's evolution. So if this doesn't sound like you yet, here's where I want you to start. Next time you are about to make a decision, big or small, I want you to pause and ask, is this coming from truth or from wanting to be liked? Even just noticing that moment of choice is the first step towards living in alignment and not performance. Moving on to the second sign, you keep promises to yourself even when no one is watching. Okay, this one right here, it might be one of the most underrated signs of future success because it's not flashy. It's not something people can see on your resume or your Instagram story, but it's powerful and it's foundational. It's the quiet discipline of keeping your own word, even when there's no deadline, no audience, no accountability partner hyping you up. It's just you and the promise that you made to yourself. Like, think about it. How many times have you told yourself, I'm going to start tomorrow, or I'm waking up early this week, or I'm going to post that thing, reach out to that person, stick to that plan, and then life happens. You push it back and you let it slide. And listen, we all do this. You're not lazy or broken or lacking willpower. You are human. But the truth is, every time that we don't follow through, even in the tiniest ways, we send ourselves a little signal, a quiet message that says, maybe I can't trust myself after all. Now, I want you to flip that. Think about how it feels when you do keep that promise. When you told yourself you'd go to the gym and you actually went. When you committed to journaling every night and you did. When you finally pressed publish on that project or made that phone call or simply chose rest when you said you would. There is this subtle shift that happens. Not loud pride, not ego, but just trust, internal safety. And success, real success, it's built on self-trust. I always say confidence doesn't come from a mirror, it comes from a track record, a history of quiet follow-through, because anyone can be consistent when there's a reward, but doing the thing when no one else is watching, that is the muscle that most people never build. And that's why it's rare. That's why it matters. One of the most powerful things you can ever do for your future self is become someone who keeps their own word. Not perfectly and not obsessively, but with enough consistency that you start to believe yourself when you say, I'm going to do this. And look, that promise doesn't have to be massive. It could be as small as drinking a full glass of water in the morning, or finishing a chapter of the book you've been reading, or not checking your phone first thing when you wake up. It's the accumulation of those little quiet wins that builds the kind of inner stability that no one can take from you. So if you're out here doing what you said you'd do, especially when it's hard, boring, or unglamorous, that's not just discipline, that's self-respect. That is someone who's going to be wildly successful, even if it doesn't look like it yet. Because people who can trust themselves, they move very different. They don't need to prove anything. They're just becoming who they said they would. Now, if this doesn't sound like you yet, here's where I want you to start. I want you to pick one small promise that feels realistic. Not impressive, just doable. Maybe it's drinking a full glass of water when you wake up, or finishing the 10-minute task you've been putting off. Then follow through. Not for productivity's sake, but to rebuild your own self-trust. one quiet win at a time. Okay, moving on to sign number 3, you are attracting higher quality conversations, opportunities, or people. This is one of those signs that sneaks up on you. Like, you don't always realize it's happening until you actually take a step back and think, wait, these are not the same kinds of people or conversations that I used to be surrounded by. And no shade to your past self or your past circles, but you start to notice a shift. You're being invited into deeper conversations. People are asking for your opinion, and not just out of politeness, but because they actually value what you have to say. And you're not chasing opportunities the same way. You're starting to attract them. And the people who are coming into your life now, they feel more aligned, more intentional, more nourishing. This isn't about status. It's really not about networking your way into some shiny, high-level room. It's about resonance. It's about energy. It's about growth. You've done or are doing the work, and your environment is starting to reflect it back to you. I've experienced this shift personally so many times. There was a season where I felt like I was constantly forcing connections, forcing conversations, trying to make things click with people who deep down weren't really on the same wavelength. And let me tell you, it was very exhausting. I found myself stuck in conversations that were so surface level, listening to the other person go on about materialism, looking a certain way, gossiping, etc. But slowly, as I got clearer on who I was and what I valued, something changed. I stopped chasing and I started receiving. I started attracting friendships, clients, mentors, and even strangers who just got it. People who challenged me, supported me, didn't envy me, and brought out the version of me I actually liked being around. And the thing is, you don't always notice this in the moment. Sometimes it's not until someone reflects it back to you. Like when a friend says, I love how grounded you are. Or a colleague who says, I knew I had to reach out to you for this. That's not random. That is alignment. That is self-work paying off in the external world. So if your relationships feel deeper, and if people are asking for your insight, if you're being presented with new paths or opportunities that feel exciting but also peaceful, you're on the right track. And that, my friend, is success. Not because you are being chosen more often, but because you've changed what you're available for. You no longer tolerate low vibe dynamics. You don't over-explain yourself just to keep a connection alive. You don't feel guilty for outgrowing certain friendships or conversations. That's not arrogance. That's evolution. You are making room for better without bitterness, just with clarity. So of course, if this does not sound like you, here is where I want you to start. I want you to audit your circle. I want you to ask yourself, who leaves me drained and who leaves me better? Then choose to pour into the connections that feel reciprocal, not performative. Even one aligned conversation can shift your energy for the entire week. Moving on to sign number 4, you can self-regulate in triggering moments. This one is very big, and honestly, it might not look like success to just anyone, but it is. Every time you choose to respond instead of react, and every time you pause instead of explode, and every time you feel the emotion without letting it control your next move, you are winning. You are winning quietly and you are winning powerfully. Because let's be real, life is gonna life. People will frustrate you. Deadlines will pile up. You're gonna get misunderstood, ghosted, rejected, overlooked. And in those moments, your nervous system will want to do what it's always done. Snap, freeze, overthink, people please, numb out, whatever your default is. But when you start to build that muscle of self-regulation, that sacred little pause between stimulus and reaction, it changes everything. I'll be honest, this is one that I still work on constantly to this very day. I've definitely had those moments where I reacted out of frustration or anxiety and then immediately thought, ugh, that is not how I wanted to show up. And it sucks. But also the moments where I didn't react, where I sat with the discomfort, maybe took a walk, cried it out, journaled, gave it 24 hours before responding, that felt like a different kind of power, like quiet authority over my own energy. Even in times of conflict, there's been times recently where I've been so proud of myself for just holding my composure and approaching it in a calm and level-headed manner, and it made me feel so feminine yet so strong. I actually felt in control of the situation, and the situation ended in my favor. And that's what real success looks like to me now. Not having zero triggers, but knowing how to move through them without losing myself. Because think about it. The people who thrive long-term, emotionally, professionally, relationally, they're not the ones who never feel anything. They're the ones who've learned how to hold space for their own feelings without projecting them onto everyone else. That is called leadership. That is called maturity. That is the kind of inner work that turns into outer peace. So if you've noticed lately that you're handling things a little differently, maybe you didn't clap back the way you used to, or you finally walked away from a draining conversation with grace instead of guilt, that is growth. That's not you becoming cold or emotionless. That's you becoming in control. And listen, you don't need to be perfect at this, okay? You don't need to be calm all the time, but even just catching yourself in the middle of the spiral and saying, wait, I don't want to react like this, that is a win, because now you're observing your patterns instead of becoming them. Now, if this does not sound like you yet, I want you to start by practicing the pause. Next time you feel triggered, give yourself just 10 seconds before responding. Just breathe, ground. And if you need to, literally say, can we talk about this later? Because regulating yourself isn't about suppression, it's about choosing peace over proving a point. Moving on to sign number 5, you've built or are building skills constantly. And this is something that doesn't get enough credit when we talk about success. I'm not talking about titles. I'm not talking about degrees. I'm not talking about the flashy, I'm booked and busy energy. I am talking about the quiet, behind the scenes kind of progress where you are actively learning something that sharpens you, that expands you, and that makes you more capable. The truth is, people who are going to be wildly successful, they're learners. They're constant learners. They don't just go to school, get a degree, and call it a day. They stay curious. They stay uncomfortable. They choose growth even when no one's grading them on it. Whether you're taking a course or watching YouTube tutorials or reading books or practicing a new creative skill or even just asking better questions in your day-to-day conversations, that is building skills, and skill compounds. It opens doors that you didn't even know were locked. And I think this one gets overlooked because it doesn't always look glamorous. Like you might be sitting at your kitchen table watching a 20-minute design tutorial while your laundry's going in on the background. Or maybe you're editing a little Canva graphic for your side hustle that no one's even seen yet. But that is you investing in your future self. That is leverage in motion. Even if you're not making money from it yet or sharing it publicly, the fact that you're willing to learn without needing immediate validation is such a massive success signal. It means you're not waiting to be picked. You're preparing yourself to walk into whatever opportunity comes next on your own terms. And this doesn't have to be career focused either. You could be learning to cook or to manage your money better or to understand your own emotions more deeply. All of that counts. Every time you choose growth over autopilot, you are reinforcing the version of you who doesn't stay stuck. Like currently I'm reading a book on quantum physics, which is, by the way, an entirely new subject for me and not related to my career whatsoever, but it is something challenging and it makes me think, which I absolutely love. Plus, I've heard that when you understand quantum physics, it allows you to manifest and utilize your energy and mind much better, so it's a win-win for me. So if you've been feeling like you're not doing enough, but you've been quietly learning and practicing and growing behind the scenes, I want you to know that matters. You are stacking tools, and eventually those tools build things like businesses, brands, boundaries, and better lives. But of course, if this does not sound like you yet, I want you to start by picking one area that you've been curious about, literally anything. Then commit to learning just 15 minutes a day. That's all. 15 minutes is nothing. One podcast episode, one tutorial, one page of a book. You really don't need a full plan yet. You just need to start stacking your knowledge. Moving on to sign number 6, you are at peace with slow progress. We live in a world that rewards fast. Fast growth, fast money, fast results. And if you're not careful, it'll convince you that if things aren't happening overnight, they're not happening at all. But that's not the case. One of the clearest signs that you're on the path to real sustainable success is when you stop rushing, when you stop panicking that things are taking longer than you thought they would, and instead you find peace, even a quiet sense of trust in the fact that progress is happening, just not always loudly. I really believe that the most solid growth often happens when no one's clapping for it, when the results haven't fully kicked in yet. When you're still waking up early, showing up for your routine, doing the work, and feeling like no one sees it but you. That's the part that most people skip or quit during. But if you can stay in it without needing instant proof that it's working, you've already won. Because let's be real, long-term success, it is rarely linear, and it almost never comes in viral moments or perfect timelines. It's built in the messy, boring, unglamorous middle, in the weeks where you feel like you're pouring your energy into something that's not giving you much back yet, but deep down, you know it will. And that belief, that commitment, that is what separates people who just want success from people who actually become it. And I get it, okay? Slow progress can feel very frustrating, especially when you're surrounded by people posting highlight reels of their wins every 5 minutes. But here's what I've learned. The pace that protects your peace is the pace that's meant for you. Fast is very fragile. Slow, on the other hand, is very sustainable. And if you're building something real, yourself, your business, your lifestyle, or your relationships, it's okay if it takes time. In fact, it should take time. So if lately you've been feeling a little behind or a little discouraged, like things aren't clicking fast enough, I just want you to pause, okay? Just zoom out for a second. Think about how far you've come and think about the version of you who used to spiral when progress felt slow. And now, look at you. You're still here. You're still showing up. You're still becoming. That is success. And if this doesn't sound like you yet, here's where you're going to start. Reframe your entire timeline. Write down why your goals matter, not just when you want to get there. And then ask yourself, what would it look like to enjoy the process, even if it takes twice as long? Because the goal isn't just to arrive, it's to arrive well. I'm going to say that again. The goal isn't just to arrive, it's to arrive well. Moving on to sign number 7, you are drawn to inner work, not just outer wins. There comes a point, and maybe you're already there, where the things that once felt like the ultimate definition of success just don't hit the same anymore. Like, yeah, recognition still feels nice. Hitting a goal still matters. But you start to notice that what really satisfies you, what really moves the needle in your soul, is the internal stuff. How you feel when you're alone, how you speak to yourself, how you recover from setbacks, whether you actually like the person you're becoming. That shift, that craving for deeper healing, emotional intelligence, presence, and purpose, that is a massive sign that you are going to be very successful. Because the people who are drawn to inner work are the ones who build lives that are actually sustainable and not just impressive. You start to care more about your patterns than your praise. You notice your reactions, your conditioning, your wounds. And instead of ignoring them or projecting them onto others, you get curious. You slow down and you ask, where is this coming from? That level of self-awareness, it changes absolutely everything. And you realize that success without emotional regulation isn't really success. It's just chaos with money or validation with burnout. And the more that you tap into your inner world, whether through journaling, therapy, breath work, prayer, stillness, boundaries, whatever your version is, the more that you're going to start to show up in your outer world with a different kind of energy, with calm, with clear, with certainty. And it's not always graceful. Like, inner work can also be messy. It can be draining. It can be humbling. You might cry more or feel more or outgrow people or even let go of parts of yourself you thought would always be part of your identity. But the trade-off is peace. It's self-respect and the kind of strength that doesn't have to prove itself constantly. So if lately you've been more interested in why you think the way you do, if you're having deeper conversations with yourself or others, and if you've started setting boundaries or noticing patterns or even catching your own internalized beliefs, that is success. That is the root work. And that is where real transformation, that's where it begins. Because let's be honest, you can only outperform your inner world for so long. At some point, what's happening on the inside, it catches up to you. And if you've already started tending to that inner landscape, you're ahead of the game in ways most people won't understand until it's too late. You're not chasing empty wins anymore. You're becoming someone who can actually hold the life that they're building. Now, if this doesn't sound like you just yet, I want you to start by picking one reflective habit. Whether it's journaling, breath work, or a voice note to yourself at night, I want you to do it consistently for a week. Not to fix yourself, but to hear yourself more clearly. Self-awareness is the beginning of every kind of success. I can promise you that. Now, if you've been listening to all these signs and thinking to yourself, wow, I've really changed a lot, that is amazing. That is the whole point, because one of the most beautiful, slightly terrifying, completely underrated signs that you are growing into the kind of person who's going to be wildly successful is when you no longer fully recognize who you used to be. And I don't mean that in a way where you're judging your past self. It's more like you've started softening in some places and sharpening in others. And you don't respond the way you used to. You don't tolerate the same things. You feel more protective of your time and your peace and your energy. And you might even look back on the version of you from a year ago or 5 and feel a mix of tenderness and distance, like, I love her, but I don't miss being her. And that is very powerful. That gap between who you were and who you're becoming, that is where the real work lives. But let's be honest, change isn't always comfortable. Sometimes it's incredibly lonely. Sometimes you lose people. Sometimes you lose parts of yourself that felt safe or familiar. And that can feel very scary, but also exciting because you are evolving. You're not static. You're not staying in the same cycles. You're growing, and growth, even when it's quiet and awkward and uncertain, is a massive sign that something beautiful is on the way. So if you feel like you're in that in-between space right now, that becoming area, just know that is not failure. That's you moving forward. Now, these 7 signs, they don't always look like success from the outside. There is really no trophy for emotional maturity and no round of applause for staying calm, and also no viral moment when you keep a promise to yourself. But this is the stuff that really builds you, quietly, deeply, and daily. And if you're doing even one of these things consistently, imperfectly, in your own timing, I want you to know that you are already more successful than you think. You're not behind, you're not too late, and you're not doing it wrong. You are just in the middle of becoming someone who can hold the life that they're building. And if you're not quite there yet, that is okay too. You're aware now. You have places to start, and you already started by listening to this episode. So I want you to start making those little shifts, the kind that compound, the kind that change your life. So wherever you are on your journey, I want you to own it, I want you to trust it, and I want you to honor it. Because the version of you you're growing into, she's not just going to be successful. She's going to be unshakable, and she is already on her way. Now, if you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend. And if you made it this far, I appreciate you so much. And I can't wait to chat with you again in next week's episode. Lots of love, Parmis.